Today I'm going to share with you 5 specific tasks that you can have volunteers or interns help your chamber out with. The first one's probably the most obvious, and that is making phone calls. But it can also be answering phone calls. While it can depend upon their availability and just what they want to do, we try to actually have a volunteer help us answer phone calls and direct phones for us. But you can also have people that prefer project-based work make specific phone calls for you. So that might be calling your newest members every month to invite them to your next networking event, or it could be calling your other volunteers to make scheduling appointments or getting contact information, updating your database. And a lot of times I just actually print out most of the information. I say, I need you to call this person. Here's the box of the information. I need you to put it in. So they just fill out the spreadsheet and they turn it back to me and I can update our database. Similarly, we actually try to get volunteers to run our lobby for us. This can be a little bit harder to fill because it's more like a job. If you are lucky enough to have somebody to volunteer for it, you can actually do what we do and have them help you restock rack cards, call members that don't have any literature on display, assist with any walk-ins, inventory supplies, anything you might need an office assistant to do that's easy enough. The only thing you'd want to be careful of is just to make sure you're not overwhelming them. Another specific thing you can probably easily get volunteers to do is to help you up with event setup and cleanup. If you regularly are interrupted when you're trying to get ready for an event, or you're just getting lots of people coming up and asking you lots of questions because you're the chamber, this can be a really great role to have somebody fulfill for you. And the more events they do, the better they'll be at it and they won't need to ask you as many questions. And like any job, any task, that's true for everybody. They're probably going to need a little bit more help the first time, but then they'll get better and better at it. And so we get help from everything for meetings and setting up the conference room, just setting out chairs or helping make sure that we have everything in place for ribbon cuttings or other events, to our very large festivals, which take about 100 to 150 volunteers. So volunteer wrangling is a job in and of itself.
I want to take a few seconds to introduce you to the Chamber Chat podcast, which is hosted by my friend and today's sponsor, Brandon Burton. The Chamber Chat podcast is the only chamber-focused weekly podcast that interviews industry leaders with a focus on sharing best practices, trends, and lessons learned to help you better serve your chambers and your community. It's like getting the best tips you learn at conferences without any additional time to your already busy schedule. You can listen while you drive, when you walk your dog, whenever it's convenient to you. With a catalog of over 120 episodes, you can pick up tips from guests like Cherie and Kelly, Jay Byers, Chris Romer, Frank Kinney, Casey Steinbacher, and yours truly. You can subscribe to Chamber Chat Podcast for free in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or any major podcast app. By subscribing, you'll get a new episode delivered directly to your phone each week so you can stay at the top of your #chamber game. Visit chamberchatpodcast.com/subscribe to learn more.
My next thing is very similar to having office assistants. However, I think it's still, again, a little bit more project-based, because that would be preparing mailers, packets, any specific, I want to call it mindless, but it really is paperwork or getting physical things in place, making copies. I kind of think of it 2 ways, where I have maybe an office volunteer that's there all the time and somebody that comes in for just project-based work, and they don't come in until I have something specific for them to work on. My last way volunteers can help chambers out is my favorite, and that's because it's in kind. If you have somebody that wants to be a part of the chamber, ask them what they're good at or what they like to do or what they want to get better at. A common or easy example might just be photography, whether it's at events of your office, taking pictures for other members on your behalf. They could just be like, hey, I really hate your brochure, but I'd like to update it for you. And I would just be like, yes, please, here you go, do the thing. The sky is the limit. If you need something specific, you can go reach out to those member businesses and ask them if they're interested in volunteering. But something that I do when I like to volunteer is actually I show up with my resume and I say, hey, I will do a project based on these skills, and I let them actually come up with something for me. Or if you have somebody that wants to learn how to do something, you could say, okay, well, why don't you do it for us? See if they're interested in volunteering, and that gives them some experience. So one, if they want to move forward with it, they have the experience in place, but they can also figure out if they like it enough, they want to keep doing it or not. And so I think a very common example I've seen of that is actually sitting on committees. But I will say for committees, there's pros and cons, because you do want somebody on the committee who knows what they're doing that can provide experience, guidance, or recommendations. But it's also okay to have some people that want to sit in there to learn. But try to keep an open mind and see what people are interested in and how you can tie that into the chamber. So I hope this helped, and let us know in the comments what your volunteers do or what you like to do to help volunteer for others.